All right, Ro Khanna, another person whose presidential prospects people wonder about. Will he be formidable at all? House candidates, House members of the House typically have not done well running for president. He was on Next Up last night, and he mentioned something I hadn't thought of, which Politico actually led playbook with today, which is Ro Khanna appears to be the only Democrat
Yeah.
asked to campaign by Mondami, Spanberger,
And
Cheryl,
Cheryl.
and for Proposition 50. Here's my something from Next Up with me and Congressman Khanna.
But I've been so struck by this debate in the Democratic Party. I may be the only person who has campaigned for Abigail Spanberger, was invited by her to campaign in Pennington Gap in Virginia, was invited by Mikey Sherrill to campaign in Westfield and Livingston. I'm doing a rally for Mamdani on Saturday in Queens, and I've campaigned on No 150. And this idea that the Democratic Party can just pick one of these wings is, in my view, not thoughtful. We lost young voters. We lost rural voters. We lost suburban voters. And guess what? If we want to build a majority party, we've got to bring them all back. And I think we've got to be a big tent party that recognizes that different people are bringing different strengths to the coalition.
All right, I ask you to do. So, Sean, what do you think of, just to start with, forget his candidacy for a moment, what do you think of the fact that he's been invited in all those places?
I'm actually more interested in what Dan thinks, because the way I look at it is, if I would have guessed, and I've just people aside, like I've gotten interacted with Ro. I think he's a sharp guy. He's very thoughtful when he speaks and what he adds. But I don't know that if you had told half the people in Alexandria, Virginia, that Ro Khanna is coming, that they'd probably say who. And so I think to a niche, maybe but if you're not he's not playing at the A level, and that's no disrespect to him. I think it's easy to have somebody come in and campaign for you, that you can be like, hey, pal around with me for the day. And I can say, Congressman Ro Khanna is here today. That's very different than like raise money and get people excited. So I don't see him at that same tier level. Maybe I'm wrong.
Dan.
I think it's a huge deal, because I agree with him, and we've talked about this. It's not either or. You need both. You need both an excited base, and you need to be able to attract, moderate and independents. Donald Trump has done that very well in his two winning campaigns. I think that it used to be that if you were from the House, you had no chance, because how could you get attention? How could you break through as, number 20 on the dais? Now with social media, if you're clever and you're creative, I think the seeds are there for him to be a player. Now, the question is, like, if Gavin Newsom, his governor, is running, if Kamala Harris, is also running, it will be a little bit harder. But don't underestimate that Mamdani and Spanberger and Cheryl both asked him.
Yeah. All right, let's go to you.
But also,
let's go to your questions now.
Like,
come on,
unmute.
Unmute. Tell us where you're calling from and what's on your mind for Dan and Sean. Ro, go ahead, please. Welcome in, Congressman Virginia.
I'm glad I gave him a shout out.
Exactly, just chatting with you. Go ahead.
It's like the Mark Twain novel, where you want to be a president at your own funeral, and I'm hearing my own commentary about my own candidacy. So Mark, you wanted me to chat about going to Mamdani's rally?
Yeah, I want Dan and Sean to be able to ask you questions, but I'll just say, do you find if you campaign with Mr. Mamdani, does that mean you agree with everything he's ever said? It's kind of a softball question, but just explain how you think about campaigning with someone who you don't agree with everything with Spanberger either. But when when you campaign with him, people are going to say this guy agrees with everything. He's a socialist. Just explain how you think about that concept.
On a substantive level, we've got to build a big tent. Lincoln did, FDR did. FDR, the Tennessee Valley Authority, he did when someone was a rank segregationist and a rank anti-Semite. And so, the idea that you can move change with purity tests, and you have to agree with everyone, I don't think works. And then to build a broad coalition, look, Donald Trump was cutting a deal with Robert Kennedy the day the convention was going on, and we refused to answer the guy's call. I don't expect how you expect to win in a big country that has Indian Americans playing cricket in Fremont, people rooting for the Phillies in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and rural Virginia, without thinking that you're going to need different people as part of the party.
Sean.
Well, first of all, I just got to acknowledge, you're in California right now, right?
I am in DC, but I'm headed to New York actually for the
Oh
rally.
no! I apologize because I was just going to give you super props for being up at 6:30 a.m.
In a
I like
tie and
Mark. I
everything
don't know.
ready to
Right.
go. Yeah.
No, I guess the question is, look, here's my bigger issue on logistics. I mean, I'm not asking you to answer your question because obviously that's a problem. But don't you think that like going to the national level requires an apparatus of serious nature? So that if you or someone of your stature, hypothetically, were to make a decision like this to go beyond, you'd have to have a serious, larger national apparatus that could tap into fundraising, create a surrogate operation, etc.
Absolutely. Look, my guess is, and I don't know what I'm going to do, but my guess is that 90% of people who run for president underestimate how hard it is, and they underestimate how difficult it is. By the way, I think that's true of even some of the highest profile governors who run. I think it's from what I've heard, it's a grueling, difficult process. And I think anyone who would do it would have to have a infrastructure and fundraising and logistics to be viable. It's not just
How
you get
much
up.
how much do you think the calendar plays into a decision of somebody like you? Do you care whether New Hampshire goes or Nevada goes first?
Well, look, first of all, I'm not powerful enough to have any influence over it. But I think that for someone to emerge who doesn't have significant name ID, putting me aside, you would need at least those early states to be states where retail campaigning really mattered. Where you didn't, for example, if you started in a state being Georgia or something where you need a lot of money and name ID, I think that would be much tougher than if you started in a small state. And I also think for a candidate coming from the outside, you've got to do very, very, very well in an early state. And sometimes people make the mistake, they build out a national apparatus, and it really doesn't matter if you can't have an upset in an early state.
Dan.
So, Congressman, first off, congratulations for being, I think, the only person who was invited across all strands. What common thread runs through all those different places that you've been asked to go and campaign? Like, what is it about you that you think appeals to the Mamdani crowd and to Spanberger and Sherrill?
Well, I saw the Politico article. They were like, well, the good news for Khanna is he's not controversial enough. The bad news is no one cares. There's not enough upside. So, but I think it's candidly, I think it's a willingness to be a bit humble. I mean, for example, Dan Lipinski, who I'd endorsed against, we had a heated exchange on this program.
Yeah, on here, yeah.
And just the other day, he invited me to come to do a panel with him in DC on the Hoover Institute, and I'm happy to do it. So I try to not be judgmental of people. I try to extend grace. I try to say, hey, I have my convictions, but I don't have a monopoly on the truth. And a friendliness of trying to see the best in people. I guess that's why I've tried to build relationships, and I try to do that across the aisle as well. Some people say, "Oh, is that just a lack of conviction?" I think there's a difference between having convictions and having a temperament of dogmatism.
Yeah, go ahead,
Mark. Do you mind? Can I just ask you one? Issues aside, we've played this out every morning. Strategically only, because again, I'm not looking at like what our side versus your side thinks about the shutdown. Walk me through what you think is a construct of a solution, right? Like, is it the vote first? Is it like, we all know where everyone's lines are dug in, but just what do you think is a realistic construct of a deal that would get the government open?
Well, look, I don't understand why we can't do things like Josh Hawley's bill, first of all, while the government is shut down. Like, extend SNAP benefits, pay the troops, pay federal workers. I would vote for that. And that to me is what's most frustrating, is why can't we just get some of the fundamental assistance to people who are working and who rely on food assistance. A longer term, I think it'll probably some version of at least a vote on the healthcare tax credit extension. There's probably going to be some guaranteed vote. I hope we get some extension, but the deal will be around that line.
Congressman, just some free advice. I would think better off wearing a tie-dye shirt than that suit and tie to the Mondami rally. Just so it make you sure you
No, no, no.
leave some
Although
time to
Mamdani's
change.
always in a suit.
Yeah,
Mamdani's always in a
true.
suit, a dark suit, dark.
It's
yeah.
true. Nonetheless, I'd go tie-dye. Congressman, thank you for joining us. We'll see you up here in New York over the weekend.
Thank you.
You
Thanks,
might want
guys.
to you might want to take the train also.
I will be taking the train, actually.
Okay, thank you.
Or
Grateful to you.
drive.
They say that something that's easy is like a walk in the park. Well, easier than a walk in the park, hit the subscribe button, be part of the two-way community, never miss an episode, be part of our conversations. Thank you for your service to America.
And don't forget, you can now listen to the morning meeting and Two-Way Tonight on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.